Alright everyone, it is Dokkan time again, and today's how to build is for the new STR Lord Slug. I'm gonna call him Lord Slug because he deserves the title. I don't know why they don't call him Lord Slug on his title. His name is Slug. It's not Lord Slug. It's very funny. But anyways, so I do like Lord Slug, but I do have some issues with him, and we'll discuss that as we go on. I'll try not to waste too much of your time. Primarily, I do think he has some team issues. I think he has a lot of good strengths, though. For instance, he has a scouter ability. He has some decent damage reduction. But there's just certain things that make it difficult to run him depending on your dupes. I think this is a unit where you're going to feel very much needing of dupes. I think this is a unit that will excel with 2 dupes open, and you'll feel kind of underwhelmed if you only have him at 55%, unfortunately. So, with all that being said, let's just kind of go over his kit. We'll go over his defense, and then I'll go over his builds and then his roll tips. So, as far as his 200% lead options, he himself... Broly, Vegeta, and we're not counting Frieza or Ginyu, but I would say he himself is probably going to be his best leader. And I don't really like his other 200% options, unfortunately. Hopefully it'll get better as time goes on, though. His leader skill is Demonic Power, Inhuman Deeds, or Movie Bosses 170, and then a 30% increase to 200 for Terrifying Conquerors or Space Traveling Warriors on those categories specifically. It's very much a very extreme-centered leader skill, as you can see. Inhuman Deeds, Movie Bosses, Demonic Power. It sounds Terrifying Conquerors, Traveling Warriors, Space Traveling Warriors. It's all very extreme-centered. But this new category, Demonic Power, does have some hitches, but we'll get to that in a minute. He does only raise attack and defense for 1 turn. And then he has a 70% chance to stun. Now, I will say the 70% chance to stun is a very great utility to have. I think that gives him a lot of value outside of difficult content. And I don't think that should be completely ignored. I think that's something people can look back on and be like, hey, I need a stunner. This guy's a stunner. So for his passive, he does have an entrance animation or an entrance intro domain. It all happens all at once. So he gets attack plus 200% and reduces damage received by 33% for the rest of battle, and creates the domain Earth Shrouded in the Clouds for 3 turns from his entry turn. When there is another 3 or more demonic power category allies on the team upon the character's entry turn. So you must have a team of at least 3 other demonic power units, not including Slug himself. Key plus 2 attack and defense plus 200% and reduces damage received by 33%. He launches an additional attack that has a 70% chance of becoming a super. He has plus an additional attack and defense plus 50% with each attack performed up to 200. And he foresees enemy super attack within the character's attacking turn, starting from the turn in which the character receives the 5th attack in battle. And then he also has recover 6% HP when HP is 66% or less at the end of the turn. 666, get it? Demonic. Recovers 10% HP at the end of the character's attacking turn, and all allies keep plus 2 while the domain Earth Shrouded in Clouds is active. And then he does also have an active skill, Darkness Blaster. Massively raises attack temporarily and causes ultimate damage. Does not crit, does not have attack effective against all types, doesn't have none of that. You can activate it when your HP is 60% or less, or starting from the 4th turn of the start of battle. The domain in question does give demonic power category enemies and allies attack and defense plus 15%, and then it also increases damage received by superclass enemies and allies by 10%, and then plus an additional 15% for characters who also belong to the Earthbred Fighters category. So this is something interesting to keep in mind, is that he he increases the damage dealt to Earthbred Fighters category enemies and allies specifically that are on, So 25% is huge for Superclass Earthbred Fighters. That is insane. I will say that with the demonic power category, that does make it a little rough, though. And I'm going to show you exactly why, because this is going to be the first thing we really get into here. So demonic power is a brand new category, and it puts a bunch of random different characters on the demonic power category. Now, if you've been paying it, if you have started watching Dragon Ball Daima, a little bit of spoiler, there's a little bit of spoiler right here, and please do like skip ahead to like one of the other tabs if you don't want spoilers for Daima, because this is what I'm about to speak it. They have learned that there is certain types of beings in the universe that were originated from the demon realm, and that's why they have demonic power. And as you're going to see right here, Gohan, who is trained by Piccolo, and Piccolo is on there. You got Babidi, you got other Piccolos, you got Majin Boos, more Gohans, more Piccolos, Namekians, and then you even got yeah. There's a lot of spoiler warning right here, basically. But the point is that, hey, wait a minute, 21's on the demonic power? Ooh, I didn't know that. But anyways, so demonic power is an interesting category where it's very mixed, as you can tell. It's a very mixed bag of demonic power-esque units, and although it is littered with lots of good super units, I don't feel like Slug's team is good for super units. So including super units on his team where he's actually negatively impacting them and not linking with them whatsoever, it makes it really difficult to really run them on that team. It's a brand new category, so hopefully, maybe in the future we'll get a Piccolo or a Gohan that has demonic ways, or maybe a Daima unit. So hopefully in the future that'll be remedied, but for the time being, there is not a lot of demonic power units that you can really run together. With Slug specifically, I think the best bet as of right now at the time of release of this unit is definitely going to just be running like a Majin Buu units, and probably the Hirudegarn. Hirudegarn's going to be a very key person here. I think Hirudegarn, even this Majunior's going to see some extra play right here, and I probably should have put Majunior onto his partners, because I do feel like Majunior is a good partner. He has aged a little bit, I mind you, but I will say he is probably a decent partner for Slug. I mean, Big Bad Bosses, Thirst for Conquest will both be activated, which are the two primary links. But that's the thing, is like he only has Big Bad Bosses, Thirst for Conquest, and then Fierce Battle to link with him. So I do apologize for not putting him on the roll tips. I don't have time to re-edit the clip here, but he is a good partner for Slug. Just keep that in mind. But with all that being said, he does have some decent partners in here. I think there's a lot of room for easy A's in the future that could be helping him, like Garlic Jr., his giant form Lord Slug. Those are future easy A's. Any final form coolers. Like, this is the weird thing about this Lord Slug, is that he really feels like he came out at the wrong time. Like, because if you look at all these units, all of the units that he's sharing primary links with are all aged or have not received an easy A yet. So I feel like he's giving the hint that a lot of these units are probably going to be getting easy A's in the future, at the near future at the very least. And I think with the way his kit is, he should survive pretty well. He should age pretty well enough that in the future, once those easy A's hit, you'll just be buffing this team as it goes. So I'm sorry, I just had to get all of that out of the way. It's a new category, restrictions and all of this. It's all very intricate, and it very much is it's a change up. So let's go ahead and go take a look at his defense compliments of Halvard over here. So, start of turn, he's not looking crazy. 250k defense, not very much. If you manage to full build up after performing 4 attacks, you can get up to a start of turn defense of 700k. Very respectable number right there. And then with domain up, it could be at 840. I highly doubt you will be in a position of point where you'll have the domain and be fully built up unless you have like a full additional build. So please don't really pay attention too much to that with domain point. What you want to pay attention to is the full build up up top here, which with a double super. Don't expect him to triple because that's just your hidden potential. Although yes, he can technically hit 1.8, I would say it's very unlikely that you will hit 1.8. I think it's very likely that on a double super with on-turn support, I would say your maximum average at Rainbow would probably be closer to like 1.5 mil. Now, don't get me wrong, like 1.5 mil is not bad. It is one sec. Sorry about that. So what was I saying? Oh, that's right, his defense. So his defense is good enough. I'd say you're going to be averaging around the 1.5 mil. Unless you're running double STR Slug, you will not be under his domain for more than the first 2 appearances, which is only turn 3. So literally after turn 3 with domain is an impossible numbers. So, you know, double support, you know, double STR, which is preferred. Double lead Lord Slug is probably the best thing you're going to want to go for. I'd say he's very good. I'd still say he's very good. He has 66% damage reduction in total lined up, and I think that is important that he has that 66% damage reduction. If you do not have the 66% damage reduction up, you will be struggling. I think it is mandatory that you run Slug with 3 other demonic power category units. Otherwise, you will be having a rough time. So let's just kind of go over his builds here. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see this is for 55%, check marked right there. I would suggest giving him a defense orb and just giving him a level 5 crit. He's an STR character, so he already has level 5 crit built in. Just give him another 5 and you'll have a 20% chance to crit. Out of everything this guy does in his kit, he does not crit. There's no crit, there's no attack effective against all types, there's nothing in this kit to give him any damage. Does Slug do good damage? He does okay damage. He can get maybe around the 20 million mark at Rainbow. I would say a 55% to maybe 1 dupe, you're probably only going to be ranging, I don't know, maybe 1.5, or 15 mil max, like 15, 16 mil maximum. And with the fact that he only can double super, you know, it's not a crazy amount of damage, not compared to other damage dealing based units. So I would say just at 55%, you know, just use an infinite equip, give him a crit, and give him a defense orb, and then move on until you get dupes one day. Let's move on to these dupes. This is the first suggestion of dupes. I have to emphasize that. This is my first suggestion for dupes. There is 3 different suggestions for dupes because you can utilize Slug in many different ways, and I cannot stress that enough. So in this build, obviously, this is a crit-based build. This is a damage-based build and slightly defensive. You know, obviously getting a triple super off would help his defense quite a bit. With 66% damage reduction, you're just being able to tank better. But at this point, I would just lean in from the 55, give him a gold additional crit orb if you have it, or one or the other. And, you know, a level 9 additional in your hidden potential is actually an 18% chance to additional. So if you give him anything above level 2, you're basically getting a level 20, or what was it? Yeah, level 22% chance to additional. And so, I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. But the point is that if you feel like Slug is lacking damage, this is what you probably want to aim for with dupes. The next build is more centered towards people that feel like he needs the extra defense from additionals. In which case, I would suggest leaning into the additionals more so than the crit, and then go for full additional. With a level 15 additional, you're at 30% chance to additional. If you give him any more into here, you like a 30. If you give him a level 5 additional orb, then you know that raises the level 15 to level 20, and then a level 20 is actually a 40% chance to additional, which is pretty good chance. But overall, you know, he's not a damage dealer. He's meant to tank. He's meant to technically support a little bit. So I would still suggest keeping the defense orb. And this is, so I feel like this build right here is like the middle ground. Like, yes, I want more defense, but I also want a little bit of damage. And this build is for the players that just want to use Slug as a utility-based unit, a supportive unit, if you will. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think inevitably this might be his future at one point or another because personally, I will say I don't feel that Slug is a good slot 1 unit. I think he's decent in slot 1. I think he can be in slot 1, but I feel like depending on the enemy that you're fighting, you know, if you don't have domain up and you're just fully built up, you know, 700k defense pre-super is good, but with 60% damage reduction, if it's a 3 million super, you're still dead. Yeah. You're still dead. I mean, it doesn't sound like you are, but you are. Remember, Slug is an TUR. He's a UR. He's not an LR, so he has lower HP. So, if you take a 3 mil super in slot 1, even at full build-up, rainbowed, at 700k defense, you're probably still going to take about 600k damage. You know, we're getting into really high damage numbers here in these boss fights. So 66% on paper sounds good, but when you actually take it into the hardest fight in the bloody game, no, he can still die, or he can be the cause of you dying specifically. He can probably tank some of it. Depending on your build, depending on the units, depending on the support, you know, it really depends on your team. You know, it depends on what other things you're doing to buff up his defense, and what other aspects are being thrown into there. But if it's just a literal raw turn, it's just him with his big bad bosses and not even Thirst for Conquest, or big bad bosses and Thirst for Conquest and just a standard 40% support, it's very possible you will take too much damage and you'll either die or be caused to die even though he tanked it. That is something I would like to, you know, really throw into people's heads, that even at Rainbow, he can still be the cause of you dying. 66% damage reduction is good, but it doesn't make you invulnerable by any means, especially not start of turn defense. Post super, that's different. Post super, you're solid. Post super, this guy he's good. He ain't gonna die. Post super Slug is fine. Post super, he's tanking majority of the normal fights people are testing out and doing in the game. Is he gonna tank launch? No. He's not gonna tank launch. But he will tank Go Frieza more than likely post double super. Yeah, for sure. So that is something to keep in mind. But anyways, this build right here specifically is to just aim for a defensive type of build. You know, keep that defensive orb on. Make sure you lean in, put the rest of the level 6 points into the additional, just in case maybe you'll get that 14% chance to proc to get a triple super. And then put the dodge in there just in case, you know. This is the defensive build. It's not my personal suggestion. My personal suggestion would probably be leaning towards more of the additional crit, or just straight up crit, and then leaning into additional. But I think personally, if and when I do get Lord Slug to double dupes, I'm going to give him a defensive orb. I'm going to give him crit, and I'll put the rest into additional. That's how I'm going to build him, at least for right now. But once again, I can't stress enough, always make sure you equip the infinite equip orbs so that you can change up builds later, if absolutely necessary. So, and with that being said, let's move into the role tips. So as far as role tips go, he's kind of a supportive defense-based unit. Like I said, he is good in slot 1, but I feel like if a unit is to be a tank, they have to be able to be in slot 1 at all points of time. You're not a tank if you're not in slot 1, because slot 1 is the hardest spot to be in the game, in a fight. Slot 1 is where frame 1 supers come in, where you cannot, you can't pre-build up the super. You're just stuck there taking the attack. And not many units in the game are able to be in slot 1. So, and especially on the extreme side, you know, extreme units have a real difficult time being in slot 1, and they lean on certain mechanics. For instance, as far as leaders go up here, You know, Hirudegarn is a dodge tank, so if he doesn't dodge, you're probably gonna die or almost will be dead. But anyways, so with Slug's roll tips here, as far as a leader suggestion goes, I would probably suggest either Lord Slug's team or Vegeta's team as his primary team where he will thrive the most. These two will give you the most amount of demonic power units to choose from, whereas Hirudegarn's team is a nice sub kind of leader that you can utilize. Like, for instance, if you do not pull Lord Slug, I think it's very likely that if you have Hirudegarn, you can make a team of Hirudegarn, throw on 3 other demonic power units, and you can still use a Lord Slug friend and still do very well. So I think he's a good leader if you didn't pull him. Vegeta is not a bad leader to run under, though I will say I feel like Vegeta's team is still more Planet Namek Saga centered. It's still a very wonky team. He's not necessarily linking well with a Slug, but he does have more demonic power options. So, and I think that's important, is that with Lord Slug, you have to take into consideration of demonic power units, and if you don't have 3, then you're just not using him correctly. And that leads us to Broly as a leader. 200% movie bosses is good, but your options for movie bosses under demonic power is pretty low. I mean, you got Hirudegarn, you got Janemba, and then there's Garlic Jr., and there's not too many more than that. You know, when it comes down to making a meta-worthy team, which is the aim of my builds right here typically, you know, it's pretty hard to find a full demonic power, like 3 demonic power units to be rocking with him. So I think it's a little bit rough to be utilizing that, but I think it's doable still. It's definitely doable. It's just a little bit rough. Now, as far as his partners go, Janemba is probably his 100% best partner outside of Angel and Metamacha. I think also, once again, I already said this earlier before, but I think Ma Jr. is a very good partner. I don't think he even pops up on the list. Yeah, he doesn't even pop up immediately on the list because Ma Jr. is only going to have like 3 freaking links with him. So I do want to make sure I point out that I do feel Ma Jr. is a very good, link partner for STR Slug. I really do think he's a very solid, good partner, and he should be considered, but only as a slot 2 unit, not like a slot 1. And with Slug being kind of in the middle ground of being able to be in slot 1, but kind of preferring slot 2, it makes it rough to run both of them on rotation sometimes. And speaking of which, I will say that best slot position, once again, is slot 2, 100%. He will tank just about everything that gets thrown at him. And slot 1, he does have to be wary of super attacks coming at him before he manages to make his own super attack. Make sure you know what boss you're fighting. Make sure you know the amount of damage is coming at you, because if you're fighting Janemba and then the pre-super comes in at him, you know, you might have type advantage, but Janemba hits like a freaking freight train. So it is something to be keeping in mind with Lord Slug. I do think Lord Slug is good. I do like Lord Slug. I think Lord Slug is fantastic. I think he's a great start to the demonic power category. My cable disconnected again. Might as well end it with that, guys. Let me know what team you are going to be making with Lord Slug. And yeah. Anyways, let me know how you're going to build him. Have a good day and a good night.